Hey everybody, welcome back to Persistent Brothers. My name is Nathan Masters. I'm going to run a tutorial in Digital Designer here. Today we're going to look at the Hinge tool, so third one in here. And there's a couple pretty good applications, and there's one that I learned earlier this year that I want to share. So we're going to start with the basics. The Hinge tool is pretty straightforward. When you have it selected, you just click the piece that you want to move around and turn, and it selects the piece for you, and then it gives you two options. It actually gives you three options. There is a dial in the top left corner, and you can just spin that around. As long as there's nothing restricting the movement, you can just turn that forever. So that will give you kind of these 45-degree increments. You actually can just click on the little dot, and that will bring it to exactly 45 and exactly 90. And then this little window up here actually shows in degrees where your position is. Option number 2 is the window itself. You can manipulate things in the window by increments of 1 degree with these little arrows. You can go in directly and go even further down, so I could say like 55.25 degrees. So it'll give you increments of a quarter degree. I actually haven't tested like how low does this go. Apparently to the hundredths. That's pretty incredible. Yeah, so the hundredths of a degree is the smallest you can go, but I don't think you'd ever need anything lower than that. So most of the time, even within half a degree will get you where you need to be for rotation tool. And the third option involves the actual build area. Whenever you use the Hinge tool, if something can be rotated, you should see these green arrows. And what you can do is actually just click and hold on the arrow, and then if you drag that along with the mouse, that will do the same exact thing. And this goes in increments of hundredths as well, it looks like. So really fine-tuned position here with the click and drag method. And when I'll show with the ball joint here in a second, when you have pieces that have more than 1 degree of rotation, it gives you multiple of these arrows to play with. So the minifigure torso here I chose to use as a demonstration. It has the hand that can turn. You can also turn the arm and do the same thing there. Even though the torso itself is kind of all the pieces together, if you select the whole torso, the whole thing will move around. You can't really break it apart at all. But the Hinge tool lets you kind of manipulate that torso in place. And then even if you do have, for example, something placed in that minifig hand, even once there's something placed in there, you can actually still rotate the hand, and it kind of rotates the assembly now. So the collection of pieces can move together. So that's helpful for like posing minifigs and stuff, and that works many degrees back. So even though we're rotating this arm, that's actually going to move the hand and then whatever is in the hand as well. So that's good, kind of how there's a hierarchy there to it just follows your movements while you're hinging something, and that kind of works its way back through however many pieces you have attached. Alright, so that's applications for the minifig torso. If you just have something on a stud, like this little lever here, that can also turn, like LDD recognizes that one by one objects that are round can turn. Even a single stud you could get to turn in place. So it doesn't have to be round, but it does have its limitations. So when that edge collides there, it's going to kind of recognize, there's a degree of tolerance, but then it will recognize and kind of stop, or it will jump all the way through. So the limitation there is called a collision. And in Bricklink Studio, you can actually turn collisions off. So you could actually have pieces kind of nestled in the same area together. Isn't physically possible, but if you tell the computer what you want it to do, usually it can accommodate that. But let's get rid of that guy and go back to the lever. So yeah, the lever you can turn around pretty freely because it is round. And then the parts that have this functionality built in, it's recognized with the Hinge tool. So the Hinge tool the job of the hinge tool is to recognize parts that have that functionality and give you this utilization so that you can actually accomplish something with that. In this case, the specific case, the antenna piece or the lever piece recognizes that even this small subassembly of a part does have a hinge application for it. And similar thing here with the hand and the arms. You can select this individual piece, but when you try to move it, it actually moves the whole lever assembly. And Lego counts this as one piece. Like in your instruction books, even though these have different color combinations, this will be counted as one element because they put this together in the factory, and then that's how it comes in the box. Completely disassembled. This is already together. Same thing with the torsos. Those are already together. So Lego actually counts those as a single piece. Same thing in LDD. Even though you can select the individual components, if you try to move it, it's going to move both of them. I'll have to investigate closer in Bricklink Studio. I think you can separate pieces like this in Studio. But LDD, as far as I know, they move together. One thing I haven't really tried is whether or not you can move this if it's not on a stud. So before, just now, I had this up on the stud, and since there's a connection right here to here, it recognizes that that's a pivot point. But if you just have it down on the floor of the build, it doesn't really give you anything to rotate it about. What it will do is say, okay, well, we can make this black part fixed and rotate the base around the black part, and so then you could do that. But if you want it to get turned around, you kind of have to put that up on a stud to make that work. All right, let's continue along here and look at our toe ball. So there's actually several pieces in the Lego system that use this connection, ball and socket connection. And recently, with the Mixels line, there is a kind of a higher friction version of this connection, but I think it's too new to be included in Digital Designer. It has only been released in light gray and dark gray, light bluish gray and dark bluish gray, because I think the tolerance is so specific to those ball joints that there has to be just the right amount of friction. It actually is dictated at that level by the plastic coloring, or so I've heard. But that's a discussion for another day. These two pieces here are actually going to be a looser connection, so it isn't super tight in there if you were to build this out of physical pieces. In fact, if you built this exact 3 bricks right here, this wouldn't hold itself up. It would kind of fall down because this is too loose of a connection. But in Digital Designer, it doesn't care about gravity. We don't need that here. So in this case, when you use the hinge tool, it actually recognizes that this toe ball has kind of 3 degrees of freedom that you can move about. And if you move one, 2 of the other ones are going to move with it to kind of keep an axis going for you at every point. So depending on which side you choose to rotate, it's going to assign an axis to that piece or a group of axes. And it's pivoting about that center location. So we can rotate this laterally, side to side. And then when we have that where we want it, we can go up and down. Oops, I didn't get the right one. So up and down there, and you can see when we move this one up and down, it just kind of positions the other axis so that when we're ready for it, we can use that there. And then you can kind of turn it side to side as well. So the toe balls are really nice because you can get those 3 degrees of rotation going. Just kind of be careful about your orientation. The best thing you can do is find a spot where you're grabbing the right axis to turn. And in this case, it's helpful to know which one you're actually applying here because it turns green. You also have 3 entries up at the top, so that you can individually control each axis of rotation. So yeah, 3 axes there. You can play around with that and have some fun. And of course, once you start building on to this outside here, we'll just add in some pieces to show that these do indeed follow along, even with the hinge. So this is at 25. Let's put that at 15. So you can just work your way through and really throw it wherever you want. Anything that's attached will follow along. Personally, I think for the most part, I do use these arrows on the screen. It's more direct and intuitive sometimes, to really be able to interact with that at a very discrete level, and then you're not trying to guess, down to the 100th of a degree. You can just put it in place and turn it, and it works pretty smooth. So the ball joint, I think, is the best example of having multiple degrees of freedom. So yeah, we looked at the lever, the torso of the lever, and small assembly there. I have this tower pulled up because this was a project I was working on a little while back. This is actually the top half of a clock tower that I have in my city on my train station. So I used LDD to model it, and then decided which parts I was going to have to buy. And it's more so for demonstration in the video, but similar things here. We have the clock hand. It's just a skeleton arm on a bar, so that has that point of rotation there. But where the hinge tool was essential for building this was inside the roof assembly. So I'm going to hide one of these panels completely, open this up, and you can see in here the way I built this roof was using these hinge plates. And to actually get this angle correct, it was a trial and error kind of thing. So it's not going to work as well now because everything's kind of fixed in place. But what I did was I came in here with the hinge tool, and then I just click on this plate once it's in place there, and you can fine tune it with the bar. But it's actually locked in pretty tight right now. So you can see down at the bottom where it's braced. I'll get this centered up a little better. So it's kind of colliding. These two plates right here are hitting, and then at the top side it's hitting the corner of these plates. So it's actually pretty much locked in place, exact dimensions of what I would need, possibly even putting a little stress on the parts, but not anything out of system. Actually, LDD is a pretty good check to make sure that everything will be compatible, because the tolerances are pretty tight in here, and for the most part, if it doesn't work in LDD, that doesn't mean it won't work with physical bricks, but it's maybe a kind of a warning sign that you can take, and maybe you want to rethink that part of your model. So that's the clock tower, just using that to position these roof slopes a little bit. Other pieces that we have that you have a similar application, pretty much anything with that hinge mechanism built in. So we look at this one here. This is called a click hinge or a toothed hinge because it has those teeth. Let's zoom in on these and check it out. These have actually got an update, a mold update recently, where they took out one of the sets of teeth on here, but the functionality is still the same. In this case, when you connect these, you actually want to look at, there's a specific increment, I think increments of 15 degrees that these want to move at. So that's maybe something you would want to take into account if you're using these, where there's kind of specific points that are more aligned. So where these teeth kind of line up, it's kind of designed to move in increments of, let's see here, so that if that's 0, I'm looking up in this little box. If that's 0, then the first click is at about 22.5. Okay, so it's 22.5, then that would give you 45, and then that would give you 65.5, and then that would give you 90 all the way up. So that kind of design built into these click hinges. Before we had the click hinges, we actually had a very similar piece with the little teeth, and the difference here is these pieces actually allow you to move freely, so there isn't any step with that. See if I can find the other side here really quick. I probably just have to change color. Yeah, so there's the other side. Those connect the same way, and in this case there isn't an increment, so you don't have to worry about those little bumps on there. It's very smooth, but these are out of production now. So if you're building a roof that you want to have at a certain angle, you can maybe start with these, and I guess I'll just build up a little example here real quick. If you want to have this up in the air, start stacking some bricks, and then move this whole thing. We'll use Control to select multiple, and then we can move the whole thing over here. I'll rotate it in place. Hinge tool again will angle this down. And now, if you want to build a roof out of plates or something like that, you can just put those plates right on to that hinge down piece. And you have a pretty customizable roof section where you can kind of put that at any angle. And similar application here to the clock tower that I was talking about, where you actually have the hinge plates inside. So just a different type of hinge. In fact, if you know the angle that you want your roof, you might want to start with that first and then build around it. Another thing you can do is match the roof angle to some of the existing angles that we have with the sloped elements. So, depending on the geometry there, you could get that to line up pretty good, like right up here. But then since we have these little steps, it starts to get worse and worse. So play around with that. There are ways to make it look good and ways to make that work out. But just kind of an introduction level, I'll leave it there for now. The last thing that I mentioned was something I saw a video on earlier this year. Thought it was pretty cool, so I wanted to share it here. It's relevant with the hinge tool again. But this was in a video by Nachapon Lego, published in 2014. So I'll put the link down where I saw this originally, and they possibly learned it from someone else even before that. LDD has been around for a while, so there's definitely tricks that get lost and found through the years and posted and reposted. But I hadn't seen this one before, so I think maybe some people haven't seen it before, and I'll include it here. But basically, we're going to start with this little hinge plate, and I'll center it up here. What you want to do is put this hinge at negative 9.75, angle that a little bit, and then put this hinge at negative 19.75, I think, 0.5. So we've got that kind of split right there, and I haven't done the math to see what the significance of those numbers are, but that's kind of what you need to do to get this result. And then you take one of these headlight bricks, you put one there, and then you put another one down on the bottom, build it up like that. And then you take this 1x1 plate, you add that to the back of the headlight brick, so it's kind of sticking over the edge there. Okay, now we get rid of this headlight brick. We clone the 1x1 plate where it is in place. And now this is the trick that we're going to do. We're going to select the headlight brick, and then I'm going to hold down Control and select the front plate. And now we want to copy that and put it right there. So I have this kind of collection of pieces copied. It floats free right now. You want to put the headlight brick on the bottom of that right hand side like that. So now we're starting to form a little bit of a curvature here with these plates. Okay, now I want to select this piece and this piece, copy that. No, that's not correct. Get rid of that. Oh yeah, I remember now. This one, gotta get rid of my clone tool. Alright, select this one, and copy that. And then put that one exactly where the other one was. So now I have 3 of these kind of following that curvature. We want to get rid of everything except for those 3. And now I have this arch here, and you can kind of guess maybe what's going to happen now. We're going to line up these 3 inside the arch. And might be a little bit finicky here, but we'll see if we can get it to work. Well, I can't get it to line up perfectly, but that is a good opportunity to introduce another kind of tricksy trick. I was going to save for another video, but I need to use it here, so I will show you guys what that's all about. I need to find the right piece to use. So you want to find something with a hole in it, and then find something with the bar. So kind of any old bar piece will work. This one will work. Alright, so now what we have here is a sliding mechanism. And what we can do with the sliding mechanism is use it in conjunction with whatever piece we want to slide along an axis. So I'll select the arch that we want to slide, hold down Control and select the bar. And now when we slide this bar along this axis, it will also move the arch. Like that. Pretty slick, yeah? So now that's placed kind of right in line with those 1x1 plates like we wanted. And this is a viable technique. The space between these two side walls of the arch does fit a stud. So this is kind of legal, but LDD doesn't really like it. So you have to trick LDD into building this. And now what we want to do is we can take these three, copy that, spin it around, and put it on that side. And now you have a little sub-assembly here that you can use in your builds. Tip that up. And yeah, that's kind of a bonus round of something that you can do with the Hinge tool, is trick LDD into building on the underside of these arches. And there's other arches with this property. You can do there's two versions of the 1x6. So the difference here is down at the base, the wall goes up a little, but they both have those side walls that you can fit a stud in between. And it's not just 1x1s plates. You can actually build longer. You know, if you line up a 1x8 plate, just imagine that this end stud right here is up inside where that one is, and then you have another arch on the other side. You can actually build yourself a little tunnel with this technique. So again, that's something that you can do with the physical bricks, and it works out pretty well, but the mechanisms that LDD uses to assemble pieces, you have to use some kind of indirect methods to arrive at that same solution. So there's a couple applications for the Hinge tool. If you're a quick builder in LDD, you can use the H shortcut, and it should jump to it. And then, you know, all of these actually have their own shortcuts, so you can work your way through that with just the keyboard, but I used the mouse growing up, so I'm more familiar with that. And, you know, there's abundantly more things you can do with the Hinge tool. Every brick that has this curvature or hinge functionality built in will interface with the Hinge tool. There's something else called the Hinge Align tool that can be for more specific applications, but at the introductory level, you know, that kind of provides a foundational knowledge for using that tool. And if you guys have questions, drop them down below. I will get back to those when I can. Otherwise, stay tuned for more LDD, more Lego stuff in general, reviews, that kind of thing. Hit that subscribe to Brick System Brothers, and we'll see you guys next time.